The stream is live.
All right. I think we're here. We're ready. We're live. It should be hitting. There we go.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of delay. There's like a 30-second delay, I think. They should see us in just a second. There we go. Here we are. All right. Hey, everyone. Trovarsi here with Synthdad. And
hey. Hi. Nice to meet everyone.
Can everybody hear us okay? Let's just start there first before we dive in.
Yeah, let us know in the audio chat. We've had a little bit of technical issues.
Yeah.
A little bit frustrating.
It's been a while since I've done this, and I think this is like a reminder, man. There's always something. All right. But you know what? We're here to talk about like 2 modules that are awesome. Oh, okay, cool. And Alex said he can hear us. Cool.
It must just be me. All of that is just my fault. Sorry.
Right. Well, I'd rather have that than, Rick should be joining us. He's having a technical issue too. But yeah, let's get into it. I mean, we have a lot of cool things. We just want to talk about FIRE and TAKT by Flame Instruments, right? And just kind of give everybody like a run through of what is what. FIRE is the drum machine. TAKT is the sequencer. And yeah, which one do you want to start? Which one do you want to start with first, Synthdad?
Well, why don't we start with FIRE, right? Because it's like the one that makes the fun noises, right? And let's start with some fun noises. So why don't we do that?
All right, yeah, let's start with that's a great. I'm going to mute my mic, and you want to play a little bit? Cool.
Am I up? Okay, cool. So for everyone who's listening in, thanks for joining. These are 2 new modules from Flame Instruments, which I saw, and I know Trovarsi was there as well. We saw them earlier this year at Super Booth in Berlin. So TAKT is a sequencer, and it's kind of a sequencer looper. It's not your traditional step sequencer. And FIRE is a drum module. It's a synthesized drum voice module. So if you're familiar with, for example, the LXR from Erica Synth, you'll be familiar with the concept here. You've got 8 drum voices, and you've got controls for all of them. They can all be edited. You have wonderfully got MIDI in and out. And the MIDI out's only for dumping sysex, but really it's MIDI in. So I'm sequencing it over MIDI here. It can be sequenced over CD and gate, of course. You can also get, and I do recommend you get this X-Fire expander module here. We'll just move the camera over a little bit so you guys can all see this a little bit better. This basically is a kind of a 6 CV HP module that gives you 8 gates, 8 velocity CV inputs, and expands the audio output. So you get a left and right stereo pair. You also get 3 audio outputs on the module itself, and then the expander gives you another 3, so you have 6 in total. I tend to just break them out into my mixer so I can mute like kicks and bring things in and out, which we'll see in a minute. Looking. Yes, all streaming good. Thumbs up, it seems, in the chat. Satisfied customers. That's great to see. Anyway, so the idea with FIRE is you've got, because you've got 8 different voices, you can actually very quickly set them up and edit them. And each voice has an A and a B. So for example, if you have a kick drum, you can set it up as 2 different styles of kick. So you can have a lower kick and a higher kick. So for example, here's a kick, and we go into here. I go to the
I might jump to my screen just so they can actually see. I said I would jump to my view, because then they'll be able to actually see what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Just the
Yeah. So if you want to go back
Oh.
to your screen, we can show the actual module up close.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Let me do that. Let me kind of punch in a little bit.
Okay. So you see on the screen here now the way Trovarsi has it set up, you can actually see the parameters and you can actually hear each kick. So for example, here's the drum that I'm triggering for the kick, but then I could go over to the I can morph it.
What do you want me to show?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, Rick's here. I'm going to pause you and let him come on in while we're keeping it crazy.
Oh, here's Rick.
Stream here.
When you guys talk, because I don't think I hear anybody.
We can hear you.
Oh, super low. Damn, hold on.
All right, so I'm going to go back, Rick, while you mute. I'm going to go back to my full screen. So basically what Synthdad is talking about is that you have 8 drums. You can kind of see it on the screen here. And they said they could hear you, by the way, Rick. But anyway.
All right.
One of the really cool things what he was talking about is this morph button right here. And if we select, say, the kick drum, and now we're looking at the kick drum, he was talking about going to this morph. And what that basically means is he was saying that right here, A and B, you get 2 kick drums per track, or 2 sounds per track. Doesn't have to be a kick on the 1 or a clap on the 2. You could put any engine on any track, 1 through 8. And then you get 2 options, A and B. And then you can morph. Is that what you were kind of talking about? Right, Synthdad? Are you still there?
Yep, still here. Yeah.
And then let me see if I can punch in even further. And you can kind of see. So basically, it's going to morph between the 2 sounds. So let me just mute that for a second. So if I turn this knob, there's the 1 sound. Is that too loud? I'm not sure. There's another kick drum, and it's just kind of morphing between the 2. Let me, if I mute that for just a second, and just kind of zoom back out. Now we're looking at A, and then settings on B. Do you want me to jump back to you, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. All right, you ready? Okay.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so if we hit play on the sequencer here, I'm just going to play something basic, right? We got our kick drum here. And when we're on the morph screen, as Trovarsi was talking about, we can morph back between A and B as well using live morphing, which is a lot of fun because you can actually do this kind of thing here. So you can be like, it's a very playable module. I found it's like you stay on this morph screen, and once you have your sound set up, you can adjust volumes, for example. See if it's a little bit too hot on the hi-hat there, you can adjust it here, pop back over the morph, playing away. And then I could snappier kick, for example. Now, one thing you might say to yourself is, okay, well, what type of sound engines do we have in the module? Like, what type of engines can we use to create the drums? So let's go in and look real quick at like the different type of engines. And you have, we go on here, you turn this knob here to kind of adjust the engine. So for example, you've got a bass drum engine, a T-bridge, rimshot, clap, tom, universal, and there's an FM drum and hi-hat one as a snare drum. So all of the classic drum sounds you could possibly need. The nice thing about some of these is they're very playable melodically. So for example, you can actually have things, let's just unmute some of these guys, hit play here, and just bring things in here that are more melodic. Hey, not those guys. and not these, and say we can program in there. No, they're not coming out. There's your snare drums. And there's, you hear a rim shot. Now, the thing about the rim shot is, you see, you can go in now, say we wanted to select that one to edit. That's drum number 6. I have 2 different A and Bs here set up, and we can adjust the tuning.
You forward. Sorry. We can't hear the audio from the synths. We can hear your voice just fine. It's just the other. We can hear your voice, but we cannot hear the music.
Oh my God. What happened? Something changed since we were testing this. So you can't hear any of the things I was just doing there, no?
No, try it again.
No? Any luck?
No. Maybe
No,
that.
is it working now?
No.
Oh Lord. This is the world's most cursed live stream, Trovarsi, I tell you.
All right. But wait, while you're figuring that out, I'll jump back to mine so people aren't just
Okay.
Hang on, I'm gonna mute you. So basically what he was saying is like on this fire button, it's also a trigger. So now you're hearing A, B. If I hit select, it's flashing. I can select any of the other 8 channels. So I'll select channel 2, track 2, and on this I put the engine, the clap. So B. Let's see if let's go to another channel, maybe 6, where I have, let's go to 7. Universal is the engine I chose. So I think you guys can hear that. That's A, B, but let's change B. Let's also turn it up so you can hear it. So now you can hear the difference between the A, and then we can morph between the 2. So let me go back to A. But I think you get the general idea as you shape your sound. So let's go back to B, A, and now we can morph between the 2 by going to the morph page. And let me just kind of punch in. I think you can kind of see that little dot. It's basically morphing from A to B. So if I leave it over here and I push play on the sequencer and I unmute it. Let me go to the volume page. I'll turn down the kick a little bit, turn down this up, and I'll morph. I know it's a crazy sound, but trying to pick something that you can hear obvious the morphing happening. So now I'm just playing with the morphing of these 4 channels, the kick, clap, hi-hat, and this other FM sound I have happening here. And if you go to the master, you can morph the whole kit. Thanks, Alex. So basically, this is a master morph. that and check back in on Mark. Are you ready? How
Yeah.
is it working?
Yeah. I think my audio is working now. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear your audio now.
That's okay. Can you turn? Yeah. So if we want to take a look at some of the other features, it's like we can map all of the volume page, for example. You can map the different drums output, so it's very flexible there. You also have CV mapping, so you've got two CV outputs here, and you can map them. For example, I've got an oct here modulating, morphing on one of the parameters, which is nice if you want to automate. Now you can, I think they will add MIDI CV CCs over time, but right now, not there. So you've got two user outputs here that can be mapped onto anything, and those can then be used to modulate whatever you want inside. And that's pretty much it. Like, it's a drum voice. It's got really nice drum sounds to it, and it actually pairs up really well with the TAKT sequencer, which I have in the case here beside it. So I don't know, Trovarsi, do we want to go on and talk about TAKT a little bit, or see if people have any questions on the FIRE?
Do you have any patterns before we jump over, just to kind of hear you modulating? Can you play your drum kit a little bit, and just so people can hear some music just for a little while,
Yes.
or like just for a couple of minutes? Sorry to jump in there, but it's. I think it might be just it was your connection, because the audio is sounding garbled. I don't know. Maybe it's the back app.
So what you're saying is, what you're hearing is garbled audio from.
Yeah, including your voice now. Hey, Rick, are you?
Hey.
How are you doing over there? I'm just
Yeah.
going to solo you for just a second so people can see your setup. I love the fact that there's all this audio stuff. I'm being a little like, yeah. So you have TAKT, and maybe you want to jump into that a little bit while so TAKT is the sequencer. And do you want to talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, please.
Well, TAKT is awesome. I think the first thing that may catch people off guard when you try to explain this thing is it's not your standard, step sequencer type of deal, which so many of us are used to. You got to think of this as almost a phrase looper with a big layer of real-time manipulation, if that kind of makes sense. So you can program, rhythms, beats, whatever, by, MPC style, pushing the buttons, boom, boom, boom. You could program them with a roll function or a fill function. You could use both. It does a lot. I don't know if, let's see, let me turn up my audio. Hang on. Let me see if you guys can hear this. Can you guys hear this at all?
No.
No, weird. That's very weird. Hold on 1 second.
Cool. All right. So why he's adjusting. So basically what he was saying is, like, instead of looking at it as a sequencer where you're doing like a traditional style sequencing, let me just kind of stop this for a second. and now I can hear it. But yeah, so
Right.
yeah, so basically what he's saying is like instead of like looking at it as like a traditional style sequencer, I feel it's when he explained it to me, it was like 8 loopers, and that to me started to make it click for me. But yeah, I hear audio. Do you want to continue back where you left off?
Yeah, I have to use like double headphones because this is such a weird situation happening right now, but it's working.
Of course it is. This is a live stream.
There we go. Okay, so you can hear that, right?
You go back. Okay, cool.
Okay. So what I found interesting is that you could. I'm a drummer, right? In real life, so this is definitely feels like an instrument when you play it. That's the easiest way to say it. I'll cue up. Hold on. Okay, so I have some slices of my tablas chopped up into hits. Okay, and that's in the bitbox, which is set to random, so it's a different hit every time. So I guess an example is if you hit shots, which is basically your fill function, and this beat knob here is all your divisions, triplets and regular. So you just hold that pad down and you have your division. But where this thing shines, I think, is you could sweep through those divisions pretty seamlessly, which is quite hard to do on most standard sequencers. So if I hold it, slowly turn the knob.
And you're turning the beat knob.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just scrolling through division. With triplets.
That sounds cool.
So this is one thing you could do to program beats in like a second, literally. You hit record and you could do this. And it'll record your knob changes as well, which is huge. And next to that is velocity. So that's obviously your volume per se, right?
Right.
Slow. And you could record that as well. You could record that. But all the way to the right, you have random. And that's just completely random. And I feel when you use that, it really gives like a human feel. Like if I just leave that on random and I just pick a division.
It sounds cool.
That versus big difference. That's really like huge. It's very hard to do that with a lot of sequencers,
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that just to confirm too, I'm not sure if you said it earlier, but you're connected over MIDI.
Correct.
Just I just wanted to state that obvious. So that's why you can really take advantage of that velocity.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Without it, you could use the CV outs, but then you need a modular that has those inputs. So
exactly.
But another cool thing you could do to look at this is if you are using MIDI, the benefit of that is all your gate and CVs will be repurposed, or you can repurpose them. So you could take all your gates, send them through Logic or probability modules, and have another 8 tracks based off your actual main pattern, and then spread them all over the case. This does have CV recording ability, so you can knob record the CV outs if you're using MIDI, and then send that CV as modulation somewhere, which is crazy. So if you look at it that way, you have your 8 tracks, but using MIDI, you kind of have 16.
Nice.
Which is quite awesome. And to like touch on some other awesome things. This, I don't know how well you could see it on my screen, but these 4 little LEDs, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Let me jump over to mine just so to point.
Yeah.
Fast, well, just so people can get the lay of the land here a little bit. But you're talking about
the
these,
LFO,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So TAKT gives you 4 LFOs, analog outs. I think there's something like 26 waveforms you could choose.
I
for
believe
each.
so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for this little tiny section that you're looking at, it's nuts how deep that section is. The 4 buttons next to it, you select your waveform 1, 2, 3, or 4,
Right here.
and then your 4 buttons, or 3 buttons actually, are all your settings. So like you touch 1, and that's your phase. You touch 2, that's how you want to sync it, which will sync to clock, different divisions, or you can sync it to any of the tracks. So, if your kick is on 1, you could sync it to 1. Then you have your range, and then if you long press any of these buttons, you get a secondary function. So your waveform selection, the rate, and the
Right here,
amplitude,
right.
which is nuts. I mean, that's 8 parameters in this tiny space. So what I've been doing is, like, if you have something like a BIA, which a lot of us have, you could take those little LFOs, have them all sync to whatever you're doing, and just modulate the hell out of your BIA and get crazy things happening. So that's kind of like a bonus feature almost, because what drum sequencer of sorts has 4 independent LFOs clocked for you, or you could unclock them if you want, but obviously we're talking about percussion in most cases, so it clocks super easy.
Totally.
Awesome feature.
I wanted to mention one other thing just before you go further, just
Sure.
so while we have it zoomed in here for a second. So just to recap what he was turning. So beat knob, velocity knob. Let me see. Let me do that. And then when he was saying shots, so when this is on, when you push these buttons, these track buttons, that's what was recording the shots. If you have it off, it removes them. And then if you have the off beat, think of the up. So you have an option of it being right on or on the off beat when you're turning the beat knob, or when you're holding down the track knob and turning the beat knob. So you have this option. I just wanted to clarify that too. So when you go move further, that they understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, of course.
because of the shot, right? But yeah, let me jump back to you so you can carry on.
Is there any questions or anything?
Yeah,
I can't see the chat if anybody has any questions.
No, good call. Thanks for saying that. Anybody, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We'd be more than happy to answer them or figure it out if we don't have the answer. Yeah, this thing is pretty deep. I've really enjoyed it. I haven't dug too deeply into the LFOs, which that's my next journey, but just the performance aspects. Like, I mean, it has a fill, but I haven't even really used the fills because I like to play the sequencer, if that makes sense. And are you going to talk about the hold and off all that? Do you want to talk about that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I could even
basic elements of the sequence. Where do babies come from? Wrong streams.
I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things on here, but like to tie into what I was doing with the shots and the beat. This has 4 sensors. That's these guys over here, and I have 2 on the other side. Boom. So these are tied to all 8 tracks. So you get 4 at a time. You hit a button, and it takes you to 1 through 4, and then 5 to 6, which can be hooked up to a foot pedal. But more on that later. So bass drum. I don't know if you guys can see me. I'll try to zoom out a little. So what I like to do is...
Got it. So you're using it. You have the sensors on there. I see.
Oh,
I'm going to go on full screen for just a second and check on Synthdad. How's it going? I see your back.
Yeah, sorry. Brought me a fridge delivered.
Oh, you're still gargly though, a little bit.
Let me work on the audio on my end and see if it improves. Hold on.
Okay. All right, Rick, continue.
Sure. So the sensors, which are amazing. I think that's a huge draw for this module.
Mm-hmm.
Before I had this, one of the I like to improvise a lot, especially with drums. And that's kind of a bit of a pain sometimes to do things like immediate fills and be able to change those fills. A lot of stuff will give you 8th notes, 16th notes, but you can't change them really on the fly. It's just pop, 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 pop. And with the beat knob here, you can, and that can go for all these at the same time, whenever you want. In the middle of a set, you could activate them with a foot switch or whatever. So if I switch to my second set of these to bring the tablas back, or crazy stuff I have over here, live, it's awesome because you could it's really like jamming, and you could just both at the same time. One. Which is so nice. And I'll link back
Sounds cool.
to what Trovarsi was talking about before with the whole function and the mute. So right here you have your first button on the bottom is hold, and you see
One second. I just wanted to drop one
Zoom
more piece of information before you jump away from the sensors.
Sure.
So the other cool thing about the sensors is that hold button, or not the hold, excuse me, the shot button and the offbeat, those all apply to the sensors. So if you turn that off, you're removing sounds as opposed to adding fills, which is cool. So there's another way to use it, right? Like if you have something going and you can just slip your hand in front of it and you want to just kind of let it pause. Exactly. And then you pull your hand away from it and it continues. That's pretty neat. And then also the handy button of you can turn them off, meaning like temporarily. There's a button right here. Let me just kind of do this for a second. This button here where he was saying you can alternate between because you get 4 sensors. I have 2 right here, right? But if you had the 4, like Rick was saying, that's where you select whether it's you're utilizing 1 through 4 or 5 through 8. But then if you push this button and it's flashing, it means it's off, meaning like you're not. So that's handy too. Like if your hands are crossing over your modular and you don't want to, start doing crazy fills on accident, you can turn that off until you're actually ready to start using it, which I thought is pretty neat. But all right, I just wanted to point that out.
Well, and it also has that sun setting too, that sun light sensitivity. If you're
you
can turn that on. So
that's right.
Fire off,
So cool. So many cool ways to improvise with it.
Yeah, for sure. I've really grown to love this thing. And it really does. Like I know, like hearing a lot of people might look at like, oh, I don't want to program my beats by doing rolls, kind of, or deleting pieces of the roll. But you don't have to. You can also just hit the pad.
Hey, Felix.
Felix is here.
Yep, he just jumped in.
What's up, Felix? So you can play it, like a MPC or whatever. You just hit the buttons. But to give you a bit of how this works, if it's recording, essentially it's looping, and if it's in record mode, whatever you do on any of these tracks is getting recorded right away, and it's going to loop right away. For whatever settings, the length of your track or whatever. So if you don't want that to happen, you hit hold, and you just hit the tracks, and it will not overwrite what you have, but it will let you jam over them. So you can hold your pattern, and you come out of that page, and you could, while your pattern is running, you could still jam with the sensors or the shots and fills and whatever. without overwriting your beat, which is another thing that I absolutely love about this module. Because you could have a beat going, and then you could just completely go crazy on the top if you want.
Yeah, that's how I do my fills. That's why I'm like, the fill option, like it actually says fill. I never use it because I'd much prefer the jamming while the holds are on, the way you're describing. Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes I program fills, which you can do. You could for each set of patterns, you get A, B, C, D. So you get 4 patterns, which are immediate. You hit the button, it goes to the next pattern, and you could play them like however you want, like crazy, back and forth, fast, slow, whatever. And then the fill button, and the fill is just, you could program that per track, and it'll just fire off when you touch it, or hook it up to a foot pedal and step on the pedal, it'll fill. But sometimes I actually save it as a blank pattern. If you want to drop the beat real quick, you just hold fill down and your beat's gone. So that's also cool too, to use it that way.
Yeah.
It's just like an instant everything mute, like just drop the beat, boom, done. And then bring it back in,
can you jam for a few minutes just to, are you set up to?
Yeah, I have like a pattern in here, I think.
Just so people can kind of see it in action a little bit.
So here you have all these lights lit up. They're all muted. So you also can use these as mutes. So we could just start bringing the pattern in so you could hear like how it goes. So if I take it off shots, I could use those sensors as mutes, like Trovarsi was saying. Switch to the second set. But let me put shots on, and now I'll jam the tempos again. It's just like that easy, literally, while you're performing live.
Very cool.
Everything's
Hey,
on hold.
Rick,
You
I'm
can't
sorry
mess
to
it up.
interrupt you. Can you turn up your mic just a smidge? Are you able to?
Yeah, sure.
Or move closer to it? Whichever.
Yeah, could have been a combo of both.
Okay, there you go.
All right, cool.
But the jam was awesome. I like the whole utilization of the sensors and the beat knob.
Yeah,
Very
and like if you're like, if someone's like looking at this or considering it, there's like, even that is like a 2-second example of just like some things you could do on the fly. So if you could put your head in that zone live, it's so easy to do these things live, super accessible. But then you have your regular other layers of modular, running it through effects and this and that, and whatever other things you might do to your rhythmic information. And once it's all together in a live setting, it can get pretty intense in a really easy way, which is something I really love about it. It's very immediate.
Yes. So what else have you been doing with this? Have you messed with any of the Euclidean sequencing at all?
I have a little bit, not too much, but you can do that. Yeah. If I do that, I'm gonna wipe all this out probably. So I don't know if I want to wipe this out yet.
It's okay.
In case I give everybody the jam that was supposed to be.
Let me
to,
check the
to
chat and
the
make
audio
sure.
issues.
Does anybody have any questions? I see people were just mentioning to have you turn up a little bit, but that's
Yeah.
no questions. All right.
I'm back now. I don't know if that's
Yeah. Oh, there you are. Let's see.
testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's a little better.
Goodness. A little better as in, or it's less corrupt.
It sounds to me like artifacting, maybe like the sample rate. Like I don't know if you can, if this, like the sample rate is setting is different. Like maybe check your loop back because you're using
Yeah.
like just make sure that because that's what
I
it's.
hit play. Do you hear it? Okay.
It's like a digital garble.
Right. It's all garb. Oh, Lord. Garb. The best laid plans, eh? Laid plans.
No worries, I get it. I'm surprised there's no questions though. I mean, I really want to thank everyone for being here. Hopefully you had a good holiday yesterday, at least time with some friends or family or just time to relax and chill. And yeah. Rick, so
Yeah.
you want to continue with where you were?
Yeah, I'm surprised there's no questions either.
I know. Let me
Another thing. No, go ahead.
go. Yeah. Oh, well, I just kind of wanted to just solo in just so, again, just to refresher in case nobody's looking at the manual or has a picture in front of them. But on the panel, again, where he was talking about the hold. So if you hit the hold button, all these channels are now held, which means that, well, first mute. If I go to mute, I have them all muted. So I'm going to start my sequence and I'll just use these little percussion things as an example. So now these are unmuted, but if I go to the hold, they're all being held, which means that that's what he was referring to. Now, if I just hold these down and while he was changing the beat knob, it didn't record over the pattern. But if I turned off the hold and did that, now it's going to record over my pattern. So that's what I just kind of wanted to zoom in and let people see that up close. Let me go back and mute that for just a second. And then you have these other pages too, which is variation. And do you want to talk about the variation?
Yeah,
I like how it sounds with the tablas. So yeah, but I wanted to let people kind of take a look at this. So now, for example, variations, let me mute that for a second so you can hear me. But if I go to the variations, it's the same thing. These lit up tracks are going to be affected and the ones that are off are not. And Rick, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. That's a good point though, because any of those functions, that's how it works. If it's lit up, it's on. If it's not, it's off. Which is also awesome because it's super easy live. If it's lit up, you know what's happening. If it's not lit up, you know what's happening.
Exactly.
So with variation, yeah, I had my first 4. I'll just put them all on for the hell of it. And I could play the same pattern and you have a variation knob. If I can remember exactly how it works, you turn it to the right, and it just essentially, it's like probability. It drops gates, triggers, whatever. When you turn it, I think to the left, it does similar, but it also varies. I think the gate time. I'm not 100% sure which.
And I think it adds it. So think of 12 o'clock is off.
Yeah.
Turning it to the left takes away, like it's subtractive, and then to the right is subtractive, and then to the left is additive to the variation. So again, it's like another way to fill
in a super easy way too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if I just run it, unmute these guys.
now you have the very right?
It's literally that easy. Which is great live, because if you go into a break or something, you just bring it back. Very immediate. Which is so nice to have. So that's another quick access awesome feature of this module that I love. What else can I show you that's cool? I'll show you. So when you have saved pattern scenes or whatever, before I show you that, I'll show you what patterns are. So you have A, B, C, D, and fill. Those are all patterns that are saved, I guess, in like one entire scene. So you could save 100 of those scenes and load them up freely during a set without missing a beat.
I'm gonna cut you off for a second and bring in Synthdad. How's the sound? You're muted. Wait, let me unmute you. Okay, go. Unmute yourself and then try it.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's still garbled.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right. I'll just sit here and watch you guys chat.
No worries. We'll have to do it again because I'd love to hear you share what you've been doing with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Rick, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sure. What was I saying? Oh, patterns.
Patterns.
So if I unmute all these, go back to the same pattern you were hearing, I could easily flip through these and show you how instant that is. And each of those patterns can be programmed as your main set of patterns, which is really great for live stuff. So first pattern, simple as hitting B. Nice thing is you could just go back and forth. So A, in the middle of your set, B, A, at whatever tempo you want. You want to go back and forth fast. You want to drop something, little variation, which then you could use your variation knob. Go back to A, and people don't even notice the transition, and so you kind of bring it back to where it was. C, which I use as, like, say, a quick fill. And then you have D. Really want to change it up? It's even something like that is, let's say we're in A, maybe we're going to break down the song, drop the variation. And if you bring it low enough where not much is happening, right there you can go and flip a beat. And you only get glimpses of it, and then maybe you're ready to come into your next phase of the jam, and
Nice transition.
a whole different transition right there.
Yeah.
And then you have your fill. And that's not even touching the sentence.
Right.
Or the mutes or whatever.
So performable.
So performable.
I think when you're talking into your mic, make sure you lean into it.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, when you lean in, Yeah, because people couldn't hear you when you're talking over the music. It does sound so good. Like, I've just been re-recording over all my patterns. Have you been saving multiple scenes right now?
That I was going to show you.
Okay.
So in this case, I did, right? Like the performance thing I had, I made it this morning and a little bit last night that we were supposed to do in the beginning. So I had it set up to kind of show those things. But what you can do is you could load in patterns on the fly. So if I mute all this stuff. So here's your,
I believe you can save up to patterns, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, if you hit load, the screen will show you one, and then you take your main knob while it's playing, select the next thing, and just hit load. You want to go back? Same thing.
So
it's so instant and on the beat. So, and if you hit load, it stays lit. So you have to remember that. But it makes it easy because if you're in that zone where you're the type who might want to have 10 patterns saved in a set, you just go to number 2, hit load again. Seamless.
so this is where like you have the option to write these songs, but have the freedom to just solo and rip on it.
Yeah.
And maybe even write some other improvisational pattern. You're not in that moment. You're not feeling creative in that moment. It's under pressure. You can then just load up some patterns.
Yeah, 100%.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I think you sound better.
We're going to go very old school here, and I'm just going to flip between my webcam mic, and I'm going to then have to go into audio settings to choose the mixer if I ever want to play sound. So I'm just going to cancel that whole loop back there. I can't believe it didn't work. Anyway, sorry.
No worries. At least we can hear you now.
Yay.
Rick, for walking us through, I mean, the way you're using it, it sounds, it sounded fantastic, super performative. Like that's like I said earlier, when Felix explained to me the looping, like you can't program steps. And at first I was like, what? Like, cause that's where my mind, I was like, I need to program some steps or like, I don't know. But as soon as he's like, no, just look at it as 8 loopers. And then I was like, okay. But it was, when you're used to kind of walking on those rails, it was a little, it's just something different. But then as soon as I got into it, it was very liberating to just be able to think of a pattern, because I'm not a drummer. I'm the opposite, right? Where I love percussion elements and drum machines, but I'm not a traditional style drummer. But when I hear like a specific pattern in my head, it's not always easy to program that, especially in modular, right? Like it's hard sometimes to get swing, and depending on what sequencer you're using and all the things, but to be able to just kind of think of an idea of how you want to tap it out, and then just either tap it on the track button or move the beat knob to hear what it is that the way you're tapping it. To me, it's very liberating to be able to get that style of percussion going in modular. But
I agree.
Synthdad, what do you want to share with us? Like, I want to hear what you've been doing with these modules.
Yeah, well, so I think the way you were talking about it there is the first mistake I made was approaching it like a sequencer. Like I think that was the first question I asked Felix, was like, where's the playhead? Like, why, where's my electron sequencer? Where's my playhead? Where's my steps? And I think that was the kind of the mental model I had to crack as well. And like the concept of the shots that you're recording over and you're improvising. and also live recording, you know, the beat variation and the velocity variations. Once you kind of get your head around that, it's one of the most performative kind of hands-on sequencers for drums that I've ever had, actually, you know. And I mean, like, I love the Oxy One. If you want to punch in very specific drum rhythms, it's great for that. But this is a very hands-on one. I don't have the touch sensors in my case, and the simple reason was I just kept waving my hand over them because they're proximity sensors, and that actually, every time I moved them or a cable moved in front of them, it was triggering things, and I was going, so it was getting all very frustrating. So I just took them out. I mean, I just need to figure out a better way to put them in the case.
One of the
Anyway.
things I was saying earlier, Mark, is that if you hold down that button that says send-set and it's flashing, it's sort of, it just pauses or mutes those sensors. So you can turn that on while you're, you know, doing all the other things, and then you can turn that off to actually utilize your sensors.
Yeah. One of the other things I was playing with, I don't know if you talked about this, Rick talked a little bit about sending MIDI, but also, you know, sending gates. And of course, this can also send CV, right? So you've got 8 CV outputs here as well. And what you could use is the recording of modulation on the CV outputs, just like you'd record like the tracks, the beats or the triggers for a beat. And so I was actually triggering other VCAs from the gate and then modulating the volt per octave, the pitch of oscillators using this, trying to see if I could actually like dial in little rhythms and kind of programmatic play them. Problem is, of course, it goes from 0 to 5 volts real quick, so you need to attenuate it if you have an attenuator, but then you can get into a good range. So it's actually possible to use this to sequence everything in your case, not just drum sounds as well. So you could actually program in basic melodies on this thing and then like improvise over them, sequencing other oscillators in your case. Okay, well then let's try. I'm going to turn off the audio from the webcam, which means you won't hear my voice. We're going to turn, and I'll quickly switch over to my stream here from the actual synth. So when I do that, you won't be able to hear me talk. So I'm going to hit play and stop. Give me a real loud yay if it actually works. Okay.
Wait, what are you? So you're going to demonstrate the fire, like the sounds from the fire, or what are you?
Just going to play a little something I lined up here in the case, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
All right, let's try it.
I think it might be ducking a little bit. It's a little better, but it's still, you guys can hear it? Okay, cool. Cool. I think it was ducking a little bit. I think people could hear it some, but the the sound was, the
Yeah.
music was ducking, but it was
Yeah.
very cool. I think it's just the way maybe you have the audio routed.
Yeah,
'Cause-
something to play with.
But I do have some questions for you though about how you're using the Fire. Maybe you could talk about that, because one of the ways that when you performed here in LA, I like that you were the way you were dividing up the drum machine. So maybe can you talk about that a little bit? Like what?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can hear my audio now, okay? You can hear my voice okay, yeah?
Yes, we can hear your voice.
All right, lovely. Now let's just rearrange the camera ever so slightly here. Okay, I'm just gonna just kind of do this so we can get a slightly better view. I'll pull back a little bit. There we go. So what we got here is I got a mixer from After Later Audio. It's the Bartender with 2 barbacks, so I've got 8 stereo channels. And what I like to do, what Trovarsi was talking about there, was I like to actually break out some of the elements of the drums and actually like jam on that as well as jamming on the TAKT, because when you're on the TAKT, you're very much either you're using the sensors, but you're probably more likely programming different rhythms over here. So when you want to bring sounds in, and what I've done is I broke out the audio from outputs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into various channels on the mixer, and then everything else goes into the stereo out the kind of, because there's 8 voices, but there's only 6 audio outputs, which you have to just kind of make do with. So what I do is I generally break the kick out onto one channel of the mixer here, a couple of hats, a mix, and then a few other elements over here. Then I can bring them in and out. But the nice thing, of course, when you've got a mixer is, I can have various effects up here. So I had delays and things like that. So for example, you could send your hats off into some delay loops or something like that if you wanted to actually add some layering into it. And it actually is nice because then you don't need to worry so much on the Fire about like the relative volume of the parts, because you're controlling that on your mixer. And I just leave the Fire on the morph screen, and then play that. So there's 3 zones of playing. There's rhythm on the TAKT, so very much just pressing and recording using, say, the beat knob here. Then there's morphing the sounds on the Fire to actually jump between different sounds. So like one hand here, one hand here. Or there's bringing different parts in out at different levels with different sends to delays. So again, one hand here on the Fire, just morphing the sound around, playing it live, and you get like beat scratching kind of style effects when you're doing it quickly with hi-hats and things. And the other hand over here on the mixer, controlling various sound levels to delays or bringing different pieces in and out. And that's kind of how I was playing it when I was in LA, which was what Trovarsi was talking about. Like, it was more of a kind of a dub techno-y setup in a different case, but the entire bottom row of the case was what you see here. This works perfectly. 104 HP, fits in like a dream, really good. And so this is just incredibly hands-on and playable for doing a live show. And you kind of always can have 2 things going on. You have 2 hands, and you can have 2 things going on at the same time. So that's how I have it set up.
Nice.
Any other questions from people in the chat? Hey. Yep. I am. I just wondered why you were calling me.
Uh-oh.
So how do I go about building a kit? Yeah, so effectively the way I like do that is I kind of pick out a couple of different elements I like. And there's, if you think of it this way, just because you have 8 drums doesn't mean you have to have 8 different drum voices. Sometimes one thing I did was I set up 2 groups of 4, right? So, your bass, hi-hat, clap, snare, another set of bass, hi-hats, clap, snares. Now you already have A and B per drum, so that gives you 2 basses, but now you have 2 groups of that. And then you can have 2 different patterns of those because you've got 8 sequencer tracks over here on TAKT. So if we just go back to TAKT, imagine this is now broken down into 1 through 4 and 5 through 8, top row, bottom row. And so you can build up simpleized kits, like just very straightforward, say techno kits. And then that gives you 8 versions of everything that you can morph between. And then you're playing them with 2 very separate rhythms. So not only now do you have 4 patterns, A through D, you've actually got 2 groups of 4 going on in each of those patterns. So you've effectively got 8 patterns going on, which, if you think about it, that's pretty much all you might need to jam out a live set. So you can just stay on one scene, even though you've got multiple scenes here you can load. You can stay on one scene, you could be loading in different pattern combinations, bring in fills, recording over them, and then just be morphing one set of controls on the drum while you're playing the other set, and then switch over to this set, and they're just the same setup, like bass, hi-hat, clap, snare, for example, on the top and the bottom set. And that was just another fun way I found of dividing it up as well. You don't have to use it as an 8-voice drum synth. You can use it as 2 parallel 4-voice drum synths, and then kind of sequence them as 2 parallel sets of rhythms of TAKT and jump between them.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was referring to when I mentioned how you played in the show here in LA was when you were dividing up the drum, when you were dividing them up and using, as separate kits, which I thought was pretty smart, because on top of the morphing, you have kits that you can then basically morph as well.
Well, because I mean, if you're in, like what I found, not being a very experienced live player, unlike yourself, but what I found was you just got to keep it simple, right? So I've got one kit and I've got one scene loaded, and I'm playing a whole set of one kit and one scene by just being smart in how I'm allocating out the drum voices and allocating out the parts of the rhythms, and thinking through it that way, you actually can get an awful lot out of just having one kit and one scene, even though of course you're not limited to one kit and one scene.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think
that's it, really.
Yeah. I mean, that's. I feel like we did cover everything, and there's no questions. Yeah.
Well done, us, despite all the technical issues.
I feel like I want to just kind of walk through some of the specs of it. Maybe I'll pull up mine and switch to my view, and then let's just kind of take people through the basics. I mean, I know we already talked about the morph, but I kind of rushed it. We don't have to, but basically you have 100, you can load up to 128 kits, right? Yep. 128. One thing that you can do is if you go to setup here, you can also decide your MIDI note numbers, and you can this is where you can change it to all. This is where you decide where you're going to dump your kits, if you're going to do receive program changes, and then also set a kit to auto load. And you can just change this right here. Jumping back over here. Let's see. What am I forgetting, Mark? Here, let me start.
You might want to talk about, not only can you load and save kits, if you have an instrument, like say you really like that bass drum sound, you can save that as an instrument as well. So you can save individual instruments sounds and then load them into different kits. So say you had your favorite bass drum sound configured just the way you liked, and you wanted it in all of your kits, you can do that.
Right. So right here, I'll just get this kit. I'm just kind of messing with it. So we'll go to the universal, that weird sound that I made. Let's see if what he's saying is, if we like it, we can just hold this button and it'll say save. That holding it for just a couple seconds takes it to save, and then we can choose a slot on where we want to save it. And let me just get out of there for a second. I'm just going to select, go back to that instrument, and then loading is just a quick push. And then you can load whatever you'd saved here. So, and then just push this button, right? So I just loaded that. So continue. I just kind of want to demonstrate it as we're talking about it so people can follow along better.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the things we talked. You talked about the CV mapping as well? Did you earlier, or did I miss that?
Not too much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
I
you
think
know,
you covered a little bit.
yeah, I mean, it's if I mentioned, though it might have been a bit garbled. There's two CV inputs, user one and user two, which you can map onto different parameters, and you can adjust the amount of modulation of those parameters. You can also use them to modulate, and one of the easiest ways I use them is you just go into the morph screen and press page, and then you can modulate the morph amount for that drum voice. So, for example, if you press morph and then you press page, you go onto the second screen. User one input here, for example, I have it set up to morph on 2, which is one of the hi-hats. So it's basically morphing between the A and the B sound on the hi-hat, and it's the oct expander here sending in one of those kind of random walkie sounds. So basically, that's a really good way of just adding a little bit of modular modulation, shall we say, going into this as well.
Yeah. So So then just let's see. Let me go back to that sound again. So select, it's flashing. I'm just going to choose that universal. All right. And then this is velocity. How you change it to CV is just turning this knob. I was just doing it earlier, but just to kind of recap on that.
One of the things that tripped me up actually is if you're wondering why you're not getting any sound out of something, or it's very quiet and you're sequencing it from the TAKT, you may have actually set the velocity knob down real low and inadvertently actually recorded some real low velocities, because the sounds are velocity sensitive over MIDI as well.
On TAKT you're referring to, right?
Yeah, so like the two are linked together.
Right.
Just
so I
look
put
at
it right here, like right
Yeah.
around, not full, but just right around here, 64.
Yeah.
So just to get it started.
Yeah, so if you're using another MIDI sequencer, like for example, a beat step or something, just make sure your velocity is high enough. Then you'll actually get good punchy sounds out of FIRE.
But yeah, that's basically. So if we're looking at it, so tracks 1 through 8 says down here. So we'll select number 7 again, and I happen to have that synth engine on here, universal, A, B, CV, what Mark was already talking about. Now when we go to the pan, this is the kit panning, and you can see. So that's actually, you're looking at the whole kit as a whole. Same with volume. You're looking at the kit as a whole. And then if you hit page, this is where you're sending your output assign. So now everything is going out the master audio out. But when he mentioned the expander, I think Rick talked about the expander, you might have earlier. Mm-hmm. So you have outs 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 on the expander. So you can actually assign those tracks by just going to that second page on the menu. Morph, as Mark was talking about, this is the individual morphing page. Punch back in a little bit. And then if you go to the master, this is morphing the entire kit as a whole.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then setting the level of the entire kit as opposed to the individual diving in. But yeah, I mean, and then, the other parameter I want to say, take a look at here was jump and pickup. So whether you want it to jump, to the parameters, like a lot of synths have that, or like the knob settings, if you want it to pick up, meaning as you turn it and pass by it, it'll pick up. But yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot. I would love to do this again and have Felix come back on, and because he's like the master and he's been really diving into this and put a lot of work into this and teaching all of us how to the great tips of using this. So let me go out of full screen here. But yeah, no, I would love, Felix, if you're still in the chat, thank you so much. And yeah, we would love to have you come back on and show us some of the things. I know that I don't, yeah, I believe, yes. And he said, thank you, Felix. And thanks everyone else for joining us and really and going the ride and journey with our tech issues. Appreciate it. It's been a minute, I guess, since we live streamed. But that's okay, I guess. You know, this is all about hanging out and learning about gear. Mark, do you have any, and Rick, do you have any last things you want to share or talk about it before we wrap it?
No.
One thing we didn't mention that I could think
Sure.
of, which is in the works for me. I just haven't quite gotten there yet. So
Yeah.
TAKT has MIDI in, of course, and you could use numerous things to trigger events.
Wait,
But
say that again?
the TAKT has MIDI in, right? So you could use the MIDI in obviously with anything to trigger stuff or whatever, but it also has the pedal inputs, 2 pedal inputs.
Okay.
So what you can do, and it's something I really want to do, is you can hook up any type of, let's say, electronic drum pad, drum set, something like a bop pad, or an Elisa Strike, or a whole Roland kit if you want.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And if you hit the pedal could be pedal 1, let's say, could be set up to trigger record. So you could hit that pedal, start playing, and it'll boom, loop it, and it's going to record the velocity, right? Because it has that feature. So you could
Right through
really
MIDI.
actually
Okay.
play drums, yeah, and like record it.
That's
and
very
send
cool.
it out to your modular. And if you wanted to do that live, let's say you play something on physical pads, which is awesome. It's recorded, it gets looped. While the loop is running, you could be playing softly on the pad along to it or with a new pattern. You hit pedal number 2, it'll erase the pattern. But also, once you take your foot off, it's going to record what you're doing by nature, right? As long as everything isn't on hold. So you could loop patterns, playing them real time on some pads or an electronic kit or something, and be able to erase it, record it, erase it, record it live, which is pretty nuts. So
That is, yeah,
you
very
can
cool.
do it. I've drove Felix crazy about it, probably, and made him give me all the juicy details. But we can do it. Anybody can do it. I do have a set of old pads, but they're old, like really old, and there's a lot of MIDI latency on the pads, so it's not fault of the TAKT. So I have to get something a little more fresh and modern to.
Is this something that you're working on, that you're going to do?
Yeah, totally.
Maybe it'd be cool to have both you and Felix back at the same time then, after you've set up that feature, so you can demonstrate that.
Yeah, because what's cool too is the hold function, like we were doing before, where we hold all the tracks and then you're jamming on them with shots or rolls or whatever, sensors. So if you had an actual pad, you could be jamming on that pad with sticks or whatever, live. So even if you wanted to say, use track 8 as an empty track with nothing on it and dedicate it to an electronic pad that you could just do actual real fills with sticks or your hands or whatever anytime you want, just put a little pad next to your case. That's awesome. So that's
cool.
next level. So I want to get to that next level. I'll get there. I just got to get some stuff.
Really cool. Yeah, definitely. Then you'll let me know when you have it set up, and
oh yeah,
we can get that. We can share it with everyone. Felix said yes. Actually, the very nature of it and reason why TAKT exists in that form in the live drumming feature. Very cool.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Felix. All right, then. On that note, no questions. If you guys don't have anything else, I think we should wrap it. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I hope you learned more about the FIRE and TAKT. And yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.